walking down the street and you speak, and a guy turns around and smacks you in the mouth and breaks your jaw, right? He has now used force against whatever this right you think you have to speak. You have no right to do shit except whatever you can enforce. Right. Your mechanism is force, and the mechanism against you is force. And so all rights are force.
You're talking about government protections, not rights.
No, I'm talking about rights. What is a right?
So it is an intrinsic moral function.
Well, okay, intrinsic meaning what?
Andrew Wilson went on Tim Pool's podcast, Timcast IRL, and things got really heated between the two hosts here. With Andrew Wilson and Tim Pool, they got into a pretty heated argument that stunned even the other panel members here. Because, I mean, it even shocked me they get into an argument about what they did and about how heated this argument even did get between them, Andrew Wilson and Tim Pool. Let's get into this clip here from Andrew Wilson and Tim Pool go at it on Timcast IRL. Let's check it out.
That we, as we know them, are just things that we recognize as things of value to us. So, for instance, I usually define it as simply, you have a right to speak freely. If you're in the middle of the woods and you're buck naked, you can say whatever you want. You have a right to keep and bear arms. Pick up a stick, sharpen it, pointy stick, you can defend yourself. Ain't no one going to stop you. The question is, when you get into conflict with someone else, where is that line drawn? So the reality is, rights are recognized as things that we can and must do to survive and maximize potential.
I think rights are force. Period. I'll explain what I mean. A right to me is an entitlement absent duty. That's a right. Okay, you're entitled to it, but you have no duty.
What does that mean?
It means that you have it. So, like, okay,
an entitlement to speak.
Yeah. So if you have a right to own a gun,
to speak.
No, hang on. Let me finish. If you have a right to own a gun, do you have a duty to own a gun?
But do you have a duty to speak?
No, you don't have a duty to speak.
If you have a right to vote, do you have a duty to vote?
So right, so it'd be an entitlement.
That's your argument.
It's an entitlement, but absent a duty.
But you can speak.
Yeah, you can.
And so
until you can't,
the question
until somebody stops you with force.
So you're talking about government restrictions are made up by us as a people.
Just people can adhere to your rights without any form of government. If you're walking down the street and you speak, and a guy turns around and smacks you in the mouth and breaks your jaw, right? He has now used force against whatever this right you think you have to speak. You have no right to do shit except whatever you can enforce. Right. Your mechanism is force, and the mechanism against you is force. And so all rights are force.
You're talking about government protections, not rights.
No, I'm talking about rights. What is a right?
So it is an intrinsic moral function.
Well, okay. Intrinsic meaning what?
It means if again, I'll try to explain. If you're born and you live in the middle of the woods, there are things you can do. You can hunt for food. You can defend yourself. You can speak freely. Now, what we've done in the United States
unless
is
you're born blind and you can't talk. Right? Then where does your right to speak?
Intrinsic was definitely, the wrong word there. No doubt about it. Because it's not an intrinsic thing. It's an external thing that's placed upon us. It's the forced rights. They force rights upon us. Everyone knows that. Where different countries have different rights, Different places of rule have different rights. And I don't think that's, invalid. And so therefore they're not intrinsic because we don't decide personally inside of us. We don't decide what rights we have and don't have. So I definitely think intrinsic was the wrong word to use there. But I kind of feel like this is a bit of a dumb argument, being completely fair. It is hard to define what a right is, no doubt. It is hard to define, but it's not intrinsic. It's not. It is placed upon us, but I do think there is something inside of us that says, whether it's our moral code or placed on us by God or whatever it is, there is something inside of us that says, okay, if there's food out in the open, if we're in the woods and there's mushrooms there, I'm able to eat that mushroom. But if those mushrooms were in the possession of another person, there's something intrinsic within us that says that mushroom is probably for me and I shouldn't go eat it. I don't have a right to those mushrooms. I don't have a right to that food. As an intrinsic element to it, I guess so.
You lack the ability to speak,
right?
But you still have the means by which you are allowed to do it.
Yeah, but what makes it an intrinsic right to be able to do? Like, where does this idea come from, other than you axiomatically kind of just say, you say because I can do something, I have the right to do something?
It's part of a evolutionary biological structure that resulted in the survival of humanity.
So if I grab a spear and I can stab somebody with it, I have a right to?
No, that's attacking somebody. That's violating.
Yeah, but other than an axiom of you shouldn't do that because I just don't feel like you should, what makes it intrinsic that I don't do that?
That you don't go and kill another person?
Yeah.
So the way I view rights would be things that, and again, there's a debate over what rights are.
Yeah, let's start with that. What are they?
No. So there, it's honestly difficult to define,
Yeah.
but it is certain moral structures or.
I would
things
say
that are-
axioms. Would you agree with that? Just an axiom. So, like, you have inalienable rights from God according to the Constitution. This is an axiomatic principle. It means this is our like philosophical starting point. Is that we have these.
I would put it as things that were required or greatly beneficial to the survival of an individual that we greatly benefit.
I agree. I agree. We
it's-
benefit. I just don't know what makes them intrinsic, or like you're born with them, or something like this. Other than we just kind of agree to it.
So I think the restrictions we kind of agree to. And some people might view some things as rights and other things not as rights. Like the left thinks healthcare is a human right, which makes literally no sense.
No sense.
But in terms of your ability to speak, you can walk around, you can speak, to defend yourself, you can pick up a stick, you can defend
But
yourself.
this goes back to the same argument. I can grab a spear and murder somebody. I can do that. Why don't I have a right to do that?
Because you are now causing harm to another person, which is a detriment.
But why is that valuable?
Why are other people valuable?
Yeah, well, why would that be an intrinsic value? So, like, I can
One would result in the end of humanity, and one results in the expansion of humanity.
Well, no, both can result in the expansion of humanity.
Right, but absolutely not. You're completely wrong.
No, I'm completely right.
You are wrong. Self-defense can result in expansion of humanity if you're using destruction for the purpose of ending something that is destructive. But if you are wantonly going around murdering people, you're actively reducing and harming humanity.
Well, okay, but that doesn't mean
So it
that
doesn't-
you couldn't expand humanity by harming people. There's
So
nations
the argument
that
of
do this all the
self-defense
time.
is there are things that we believe we must be able to do for the betterment and survival of humanity.
Yeah, but when I'm asking you this question, right, I'm asking the foundation from which you say, I have the right to speak or write.
We
or
need to be able to in
things like
order to
this.
survive.
You because you need to do something.
So
I'm not sure how that means you have a
I
right.
mean, I have to agree with Andrew Wilson here. I don't understand what Temple's talking about. That's not what a right is. Rights are not placed on us by God or by nature, right? It's not about having a right to breathe or anything like that. I think what Andrew Wilson's talking about, I mean, they are talking past each other, but they are. But Tim Pool is going into rights that are given to us by nature, and Andrew Wilson's talking about rights that are forced on us by the government. And I think they're not the same at all. Maybe in every single country it's just understood for certain rights, as we have the right to blink and the right to breathe and the right to exist, right? But there's other rights that are placed upon us, such as the right to universal health care, right? The right to freedom of speech, the right to bear arms. Those don't exist in every country, and people forget that. And other countries have certain rights that we might not have. That's what Andrew Wilson's talking about here. Those rights are forced. That's what Andrew Wilson's saying. But Tim Pool just can't grasp that, apparently.
Though,
Okay, so speech is not
like you have
just
to
saying
eat.
words.
You
Speech
have a right to eat.
Yes, 100%.
Really? You have a right to do that?
Why would you
Yes,
not
you don't have a right to own
do
So
that?
if I have,
But you have a right to eat, otherwise you'll die.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Do you have a right to breathe? What about breathing?
These are good questions. Right?
Again, I don't think you understand. We're talking about intrinsic behaviors that are required for survival versus the government and humans deciding what we shouldn't have.
I
on
don't think we're
laws.
speaking past each other. I'm asking what makes them intrinsic. When you say I have a right to eat, okay?
If you don't, you'll die.
If you have if that guy has all the food over there, you no longer have a
We
right
are
to
not
eat.
talking about your right to steal from others. If you
Yeah,
are
so you
standing
no longer
in
have
the
a right
woods
to
by
eat?
if you are standing in the woods by yourself, eat that mushroom.
Okay, got it. You can eat the mushroom.
Uh-huh.
But what makes it a right to eat that mushroom, and what makes it not a right for guys standing next to the mushroom to say,
Okay, we're
I have a
talking- we're talking
gun
about
and
laws?
I don't want
Wait,
you
wait,
to
hold
eat
on.
that mushroom?
You're now once again talking about laws and restrictions.
Yeah, okay, but my whole theory is that rights themselves are force, and that's all they ever are. It's just your ability.
I'm so confused. I mean, maybe I sound so stupid right now, and let me know in the comments if I do. But what is the difference between a right and a law? Rights are laws, are they not? Like it's a law that we have the right to bear arms. Like that's part of the law of the United States of America. What is the difference? I think Andrew Wilson's making a pretty great point here in that what is stopping someone? Does someone have a right to defend their mushroom if they're out in the open and somebody's trying to go take their mushroom? Well, it probably differs based on what jurisdiction you're under in that situation, which makes it a law, which makes it forced. I have to agree with Andrew Wilson, and let me know in the comments if I sound crazy, if I sound stupid. Very open to hearing that. But I gotta agree with Andrew Wilson here. Let me know in the comments what you think about this debate here between Andrew Wilson and Tim Pool. I feel like it's a bit of a silly debate, to be quite honest. I don't know how this is, super relevant, but I gotta agree with Andrew Wilson here. I think it came out on top. Let me know in the comments what you think about this whole Tim Pool versus Andrew Wilson here live on Timcast IRL.